Now, Mount Atlas was a very large mountain. It was formed around the sometimes sleeping form of the Titan Atlas, cursed to hold up the heavens. And his great point still did that, even though he was asleep for many centuries at a time. And he certainly wasn't woken by Perseus clambering up the foothills. And he approached a cave. The cave Mr. Sidon had told him to go to. And he saw a fire burning within, casting its flickering shadows into the outside, and he heard 3 high-pitched and screeching voices. "You forgot to buy milk! I didn't forget to buy milk! Check in the cupboard under the sink! Why would it be there? We keep it in the fridge!" And he came and he peered inside, and he saw that there were 3 women, dressed in rags, and the 3 women had a single tooth between them and a single eye between them. There were 5 hollowed out and dark sockets. And as he watched, one of them poked the other one on the back of the head, caught the eye as it fell out, stuck it into one of her dark sockets, and it... "Let me have a look. You haven't been shopping in ages. There's nothing in the fridge." And another one reached in and plucked the eye from her. Let me see. And Perseus went, "Oh, this might be a bit over my head." And he snuck in. Carefully as he could, he crept into the cave, and he approached the flickering fire. Well, the 3 grey-eye were busy looking for whatever they were looking for to put into the pot, which smelled unspeakable as it burned and bubbled over the cooking fire. And he reached out to shake the hand of one of them, because he was a nice, well-mannered young man, and he said, "Excuse me, miss, my name is Perseus." But she turned in surprise, and he knocked her in the chest, and her eye fell out and into his hand. Oh, your eye! Oh, that's bad! Oh, I'm so sorry!" And the grey-eye immediately dropped on their knees. Please, don't crush the eye. We need the eye. It tells the future and the past. Please, young man, we will give you anything. Just return the eye to us." "Oh, all right. I need to know where the Gorgon Medusa is." "What? Why would you like to know that?" "Oh, I've got to go and kill her. Oh, and I also need to know where the garden of the Hesperides is." "You mean Hesperides?" "Yeah, that's the one. Don't help him." And the grey-eye, having ascertained that he needed the location of Medusa and the garden of the Hesperides, and since he had their sole eye in his possession, told him both. "Oh, that's a lot of directions. Hang on." They told him several times until he wrote them out in a long list. "All right, then we go right, then we left, that's right, yeah, okay." And when they'd given him directions to both on separate sheets of paper so he couldn't get confused, he rolled the eye back to them, and one of them said, "Oh, it's gone in the dusk. Oh, that's better," and poked it in. And she turned her eye just in time to see Perseus, "Thanks, ladies," walking out of the cave. Well, he made his way to the Garden of the Hesperides, and I can't tell you the location of the Garden of the Hesperides. It's one of the most closely guarded secrets in all of Greek mythology. It's where the apples of immortality are grown. It's where ambrosia is distilled. It's where the food preparation of the gods takes place. And it's also where the locker rooms are, and they keep all their stuff. And he approached the Garden of the Hesperides, and standing outside was a shifty-looking man in a great big trench coat and a hat coming down, and he smelled vaguely of sea foam and salt. "Oh, hello! I'm waiting for a Mr. Sidon." "Keep your voice down, It's me." "Mr. Sidon didn't wear a hat." It's me, look, it's me." "Oh, Mr. Sidon, hello." Yes, look, I've got gifts for you, gifts from the gods, you hear me? They're willingly given, but you better take them and get out of here quickly. Look, these should help you defeat the Gorgon Medusa. Here, the winged sandals of Hermes. Whoa, these are amazing! What do I do with these? You wear them on your feet, boy, on your feet. Oh, right, yeah, okay. And Perseus put the sandals on his feet, and as soon as he did, they latched around his ankles, and the wings began to flutter, and he began to rise. Oh, crikey, I'm flying! Oh, my goodness, oh, that's exciting!
Let's get down, boy, get down. There's more, there's more. Here, I give you the adamantine blade. Zeus used this to kill Kronos. This is a weapon to slay gods.
And Perseus took it and went, whoa, look at this thing! Whoa! Gotta be careful with this, I'll take someone's eye out with that! And Poseidon backed away, going,
Stop it, stop it! It's not a toy, it's not a toy, boy. Right, finally, I have. This is the best one.
And he reached and he wheeled out from his seafoam coat a great big gleaming mirrored shield. And he rolled it over. Oh wow, this belongs to Athena! Cool!
Yes, my boy, yes. Now take that. And in order to make sure that she doesn't find you, you better have this.
And he handed him a helmet. And the helmet had 2 red crests and a long nose guard and a plume of white feathers. Oh, that looks proper fancy! And he put it on and straight away turned invisible.
Yes, that's the helm of Hades. It should mean that Athena won't be able to, that Medusa won't be able to see you.
All right. Oh, thanks.
Wait. You're going to take the head of Medusa. That means you need this.
And he pulled out a little mithril bag and he handed it to him. All right. Oh, I can't look at her or I'll get turned to stone, right? Maybe I should put it over my...
Not over your head. It's for carrying the head. It's for... Go! And don't lose any of those things. We need them back.
Well, Poseidon watched as Perseus, who had a little mithril bag, he had the helm of Hades, he had the winged sandals of Hermes, he had the best weapon in the game, and he had the shield of Athena, went loaded up with the arsenal of the gods. Oh, these are fun toys! And he made his way to the lair of Medusa. Poseidon had sent many people to try and kill Medusa before. But none had succeeded. So strong had Athena's gifts been. And so as he approached the cave where she dwelled, the approach was littered with statues of various heroes and demigods, all frozen in rictus pain. Oh, goodness me! I better be proper careful here, says Perseus. And he saw there were 2 great long snake creatures sleeping in front of the mouth of the cave where Medusa was said to live. These were her 2 sisters, Steno and Euryale. And they were immortal snake gods, and she was not, and yet they were siblings. But that is another story for another time. For now, it's a good story, but for now, it is sufficient that he went, oh, all right, I've got things to deal with this. And he thought, and as he did, the winged sandals fluttered, and they picked him up, and he soared over them and down into the cave, silent as a church mouse. Flames flickered in the cave, and Doric columns stood, and he went, why are there columns in a cave? Never mind. And he went, and he heard a rattling and a slithering from deep within the cave. Oh, I better be quiet, he thought to himself. And he snuck forwards, step by step, until his foot snapped on a bone that crunched underneath him, and suddenly the hissing grew louder. And coming zooming towards him was a figure out of the darkness, a figure whose silhouette had snakes where their hair should be. And they drew an arrow and a bow. And he went, oh no! And he dove to one side, just in time as an arrow went clattering past him and smashed against one of the pillars. All right, don't look her in the eyes, that's right. And he took out the mirrored shield, and he held it up, and he held it just outside one of the columns, and an arrow pinged it off his arm, and it went and rolled against one of the walls. Oh no! He saw the flames flickering up one side of the shield, and he drew the sword in a blind fury and stepped back. Oh, oh, oh. He cast his eyes around, and somewhere, some soothing voice came to him. He knew not where it came from, but he closed his eyes and he focused on the reflection of the shield. All right, okay, we can do this. He saw the Gorgon Medusa stalking around one side of the column. He took a deep breath and he spun round the other side of the column, and with a single sweep of the harp, the adamantine blade, he cleaved her head off, and it dropped down onto the ground with a thump, thump. What did it? He said, and he grabbed her head and stuffed it into the mithril bag. The snakes, like buttery coils of wire, slithered between his fingers, still alive and flailing, as he stuffed it into the mithril bag and tied it shut, and the bag began to ooze a damp red blood. Well, as the blood dropped onto the floor, Athena's blessing ended. Athena had said the children of Poseidon would not be born until Medusa breathed no more, and this was the end of Medusa. And as her blood hit the ground, Chrysaor, the golden giant, and Pegasus were birthed. Chrysaor, who birthed the three-headed giant himself, who Heracles fought, and Pegasus, whom was ridden by Bellerophon when he fought the Chimera. But those are certainly more stories than I can tell you tonight. And Perseus, he took the head, and he flew with the winged sandals, and he returned home.